All right, everyone. Joe Biden has a continuing Tara Reade problem. This is actually pretty big in the terms of a political scandal, potentially, because, again, you've got a Dem presidential candidate who has done the hashtag #MeToo thing before, who has now an active allegation against him that has been at least partially corroborated from the time in the mid-90s. That's not proof. I don't think that he should be deplatformed from life or thrown in jail or anything like that, because I'm not a fucking hypocrite, but you've got enough there to go on that at the very least his Senate records that might be pertinent to it should be released. But there's the problem. His Senate records are currently sealed at the University of Delaware. Now, how funny is it? They were initially going to release them in 2019, and that never happened. I wonder why. I bet anything that they would have released him if he had chosen not to run for the presidency. And then, of course, they announced, whoops, yeah, we're going to be a little bit late. It's going to be like a couple years from now. We're just going to seal him until after his presidency ends. I have a sneaking suspicion that there's probably a reason for that. And I have a sneaking suspicion that since that collection would be something that definitely would bring in a lot of people, and they want to show it off, oh, we got Biden's Senate records and he's president or something. They would love to do that, unless there's some stuff in there that Biden wouldn't want out there. Unless Biden called him up on the phone before he decided to run and said, hey, you know those records that you're preparing? Just put that on pause, because if I get elected, I don't want a problem. And if people see my Senate records, they might see something they don't like and not vote for me, and I might not get in office at all. Don't you want me to be president so that those are the Senate records of a future president instead of just the Senate records of a VP? Don't you want even more prestige? Well, just help me out here. I guarantee you Biden's camp called them and put the kibosh to them releasing these records. Because again, they were meant to be released last year. Why? I don't think it's just Tara Reade related. You could see something about that in there. If there was a report filed, that could definitely be part of it. That wouldn't be good because that would keep that story going. I have a sneaking suspicion there's a lot more than that. Like, let's say you're talking about a senator. These are like transcripts of conversations. He's had phone calls and stuff like that, like semi-private correspondence too, from politician to politician, politician to staff or whatever. Don't you think that there might be some colorful language in there, since we're talking about the 70s and 80s? That would no longer be culturally acceptable, certainly if you're a Democrat? Don't you think there might be a few N-words sprinkled in there? Maybe some homosexual references? Some body jokes about women? Of course there are. Of course there are. We know that this is the case. Because every fucking politician back then did it. And none of them want those records released from their careers, especially, again, if they're Democrats. Because they'd be seen as a hypocrite. Look, Biden already looks like a hypocrite because he was a hashtag #MeTooDem opportunist in 2017, 2018, and he hasn't talked about that lightly now, has he? Now, as soon as somebody made that joke website showing him sniffing women's hair and touching people in ways that appear to make them uncomfortable, as soon as that was there, he shut up about it. He stopped talking about it. And so did a lot of other people, you'll notice. It's almost like they tend to work together for political reasons. By the way, that's not a scandal. That's not some deep state cabal insider thing. It's just the way politics works. One hand washes the other. Biden calls up his alma mater and says, look, I don't want the records released because I want to be president. That's what happened. But ultimately, at the end of the day, well, this is a problem for his campaign, especially in the sense of the Bernie bro thing. Like, trying to get the Bernie bros aboard when you've got the Terry Reade thing hanging over your head is going to make it a lot more difficult. That's the biggest problem for him as far as the allegation goes. He's not going to go to jail. He's not going to be forced to drop or anything unless you have like a videotape of him raping somebody, fucking, going into the baboon exhibit and fingering, animals or something. If you get something really weird like that, maybe. Otherwise, it's not really a problem in that political sense other than getting people aboard. The really big problem for Joe Biden here, though, is largely just optics. The biggest problem here is it just makes him look dishonest. And then he is. He called up his alma mater and told him not to release this, and I guarantee it was for more than the hashtag Tara Reade stuff. In fact, there might not be a report about that in there at all. Might have nothing to do with that. Don't you think there could be other reports about Biden there that we don't know about? That, the one person just didn't come forward, didn't tell their story back in 1975 or something? It's entirely possible. We know that women's rights were kind of on the back burner as far as boardrooms and politics at the time. You had a lot of, sexual innuendo happening. You had a lot of things that are no longer culturally acceptable that back then were sort of expected in certain job roles. Like the boss's secretary is just like, there's a reason why she wears a knee-length skirt and sits facing him, so to speak. Just sort of the way that it was This is a stereotypical trope within Hollywood at the time as well, for a reason, because it was a larger cultural phenomenon among certain groups in society. Biden's part of that group. Biden was a big-time senator. He's a rich bitch. Of course he does weird shit. Of course he told body jokes. Of course he probably used, during the AIDS crisis, do you think there might be some colorful language then? Used towards certain communities in the United States, considering he was a conservative Dem at the time? Of course there was. Of course there was, and you're going to get to see it, because apparently the University of Delaware, if he doesn't win, is going to start releasing this shit. You're going to get to see exactly why somebody like me, who sort of is with it, would never vote for Joe Biden. Now, of course, there are a lot of people who say, well, it's what about? Is an orange man bad? Billy Bush tape. Okay, yeah, okay. At the end of the day, this is going to be kind of like the Trump tax return story, too. It's not going to sink his presidential ambitions. But it does kneecap him with certain voters that don't have high turnout, but they're already reluctant to vote for Biden anyway. He needs that enthusiasm. He's got an 18-point enthusiasm gap or some crazy shit like that. The enthusiasm gap between him and Trump is considerably larger than that which existed for Hillary. Hillary had a bit of an enthusiasm problem. By the way, yes, all recent presidents have had higher enthusiasm going into the election than their opponent, at least going back to the mid-2000s. It's probably a trend that goes back. I have a feeling, I don't know if they exactly tested for it at the time, but I have a feeling that W had more enthusiasm than Gore as well. And Reagan, of course, running for re-election would have. Herbert Walker, maybe that's an exception, but probably not. And of course, he was a failed one-term president anyway, so he basically just rode Reagan's coattails, let's face it. I would say at least going back through the 80s, yeah, the person with more enthusiasm, measured or perceived, has won. Well, Trump already has it in the bag then. That's just another marker that shows me he's going to be reelected in 2020. Biden is even being encouraged now by the legacy media, The Atlantic. The Atlantic is a big-time never Trump publication. The Atlantic is trying to get Biden to release it. Now, they're probably coming from the position, they're not in the know, because they might actually report on it, so they're not going to tell him. They probably presume that Biden didn't do anything wrong. And so they're like, well, man, just release the records. People can peruse them. When they see what an upstanding, great, swell guy you are, they'll love voting for you. See, the problem is Biden knows better. Because even if he's demented, the people around him keep tabs on all of his goings-on. They know that things that are in his official records would keep him from getting elected. Guaranteed. That's about all. Peace out.